Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Sean, and today in life we're going to be going over 22 books that have shaped my life. So, a little background for myself: I'm 22 years old. I'm graduating from college this year. I'm a finance major, and I'm very interested in reading. I read about 50 books a year. Last year I read 70, the year before I read 50. And I primarily listen to audiobooks because I think it helps me read. And I just wanted to go over 22 books that I've read as a 22-year-old that I think you'd enjoy. This video is inspired by the best 77 books I've read over the past 77 years video. I thought I'd do my take on it. It's completely different books. He listened to a lot of fiction books. I'll leave that video in the description below. But yeah, so to start off this video, we're going to be doing 7 categories. They are personal finance, psychology, business, fiction, self-help, philosophy, and history. Now, I really don't read a lot of fiction books. There's only 2 in this list. I have read more than that, obviously, but yeah, I just primarily read nonfiction books, so that's what I'll be talking about most. I'll show the book, and then it'll move across the bottom of the screen, and that's how you know how long I'll be talking about it for. I'll leave timestamps as well, so it'll make it as easy as possible to click around and follow this video and see books that you like. So the first category that we're going over today is personal finance. I would say that this is the most books I've read. I've gotten further away from it over the last year and a half, because I feel like I've read so much that it just keeps starting to repeat the same information over and over again. But the first book on this list is The Millionaire Next Door. So this book gives what I believe to be the biggest understanding of what it takes to be a millionaire, like truly, not just what you see online, not all the flashy stuff, the nitty gritty details of what it takes to be a millionaire. I recommend this book to anyone. I think it gives a lot of great advice, and it gives a lot of information that you wouldn't expect, you know? So yeah, if you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. The second book I recommend is called Wealth Mismanagement by Dave Ramsey. So this book is kind of the opposite. It's more so a what not to do book. I read it when I was 18, so I didn't have like a ton of credit card debt or anything. And I hadn't, I was at like a clean slate. But yeah, the book taught me all the things that I really needed to avoid to make sure that I didn't screw myself over financially. And if you're young, I definitely recommend it. If you have financial struggles, it teaches you how to dig out of that hole, which I think is also very important. So I'd recommend it to anyone. The third book on the list, in the final personal finance book, is The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by Mr. Bogle himself of the Bogleheads. If you know anything about finance, Bogle was the person that created index funds, and they're really the best way to invest in the modern day. They, if you don't want to be picking individual stocks and being super up to date constantly in the finance world, you really want to go the index fund route. And this explains all the benefits of it and how to look at them and how to make sure that you're investing properly. All right, so next up on the list is the psychology section. I've read a lot of psychology books. I think they're very interesting. The first book that I'll be talking about on the list is Influence, The Art of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. The title of this book is very off-putting, and it made me not read it for a long time because I thought it'd be about like manipulation and persuading people to do things that they didn't want to do. But that's actually the opposite of what the book is. It gives really good advice on how to work out win-win deals with people and just how to communicate. And also, it helps you catch on when people are trying to trick you and manipulate you. So I think it's a great book that everyone should read. Next up on the list is Your Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. So this is a great book that helps you deal with internal traumas that you may be having. It helps you mentally and physically, and explains how you've reacted from childhood even. It's a very powerful book. It made me feel quite emotional while I was reading it. I think reading it uh, brings you closer to accepting who you are as a person if you're at all struggling with that. Next up is The Psychology of Money. This could obviously go into personal finance or psychology. I put it in this category just because I thought it fits better. Whereas my other personal finance books that I recommended, they're more practical with like real world examples. I think this book is much more theoretical and it really delves deep into the way that humans perceive money and the economy and finance as a whole. And I think it's very interesting. I think you'd be better off reading it and reading other finance books. This won't teach you how to be rich at all, you know. It more so explains why we think the way that we think about money. And the final psychology book on the list is Difficult Conversations by three people: Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen. The title is self explanatory. This book teaches you how to have difficult conversations. And I find myself going back to this book every couple of years just because I think it's such a great book for conversations. This helps you in the workplace, in relationships, like intimate relationships, and just friendships in general. I think it's a great book at explaining proper ways to have conversations, when to have conversations, how to keep things civil if things are going wrong, and all sorts of great stuff. When I read this book, I was very empowered. I felt just like I understood the world and people more fully after reading it. All right, so the next category we have is business. So the first book on this list is No Fear, No Excuses by Larry Smith. I think this book is great, and I have recommended it to everyone that doesn't know what they want to do in their careers. So the first half of the book pretty much explains how to find a career that you want to be in if you don't know. So if you're feeling lost at all or you're in a career that you don't like, it really teaches you how to find a career that you'd want to be in. It lays out uh, very realistic examples and goals and teaches you exactly what to do to find what you want to do. And then the second half of the book is for people who want to excel at their jobs. So it teaches you all the things to do to get ahead of the competition, to get, I guess, ahead of your coworkers, even just to make sure that you stand out and that you are doing the best that you can in your job and thriving. And when that happens, you end up making more money. So, yeah, it's great. The next book I would recommend in the business category is The Laptop Millionaire by Marcus Anastasi. So this book really opened my mind to different ways that people make money on the internet and online and how long it's been happening. Because, you know, I think of like the internet creators, the influencers, those guys making a bunch of money. But there's really tons of different ways to make money online. And if you're not trying to be a creator, if you're not trying to have your face out there, you can still make absolute bank online. And this book teaches you how. So I definitely recommend reading it if you want to do that. So the final book in the business category I have is Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb. So this book does a great job of explaining all of the ways that humans perceive their successes and failures. This is specifically a business book, but I think it's a fact of life that this is how humans tend to see things that happen in their lives. And it really goes into detail on what causes success and what causes failure. When we're successful, we tend to think that it was us who did it. And when we fail, we tend to blame others. And success that you have isn't necessarily because you're skilled. It definitely has to do with luck a lot of the time. And I think that that's just a really good thing to know. And it's a good way to keep your mind in check when you are succeeding, when you are failing, that it's not all you. There's a bunch of external forces working with or against you at all times. And you just kind of have to push through and follow. And if you are doing something that is causing you to succeed a bunch, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to keep happening. Same with your failures. If you're doing something that's technically supposed to be right, but you keep failing and it keeps going poorly, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should stop or that it is not the correct thing to do. So the next category I have up here is fiction. Like I said earlier, I don't read that much fiction, but I think these two books are great and they've really shaped who I am as a person. So the first one is an all-time classic. It's East of Eden by John Steinbeck. So this book is my favorite fiction book that I've ever read. I was so encapsulated, I couldn't put it down. I literally could not stop reading this book. And I found myself really relating to the characters in it and just seeing myself in them and seeing their flaws and my flaws that I had as a person. It really made me reflect on who I am, which I think is what fiction's supposed to do. And I wish more fiction books had this effect on me. And then the next book is a fiction book, but it's not really fiction in a whimsical, crazy story way. It's more so in a do better way. So you could almost put it in the self-help category. It's the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. So this book inspired me to start waking up at 5 a.m. and to just put more time towards myself every day. And it's really brought me closer to my goals that I'm trying to achieve through my life. Um, and I just really think that this book is great if you feel as though you haven't been able to do what you want to do. You haven't been able to work out. You haven't been able to take time for yourself to build a business that you want or to build or work on your passions. I think that this is a great book that explains ways to do it. And you don't necessarily have to wake up at 5 a.m. to do this stuff. In the book, it just talks about different things that you can do that will benefit your life. So even if you don't wake up at 5 a.m., this book is still a great read in getting you to do what you want to do. All right, the next category we have here is self-help. I read a ton of self-help books throughout the years just to teach me how to do the things I want to do better, or if I didn't know how to do them at all, I would learn them from this. So the first book is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. This book is very personal to me. I read it when I was 18. It was one of the first books I read, and it really motivated me to start working out more, to start trying harder, to start investing, all of that stuff because of the compounding effect that it has. And I feel like my life has changed so much in so many great ways since I've read this book. And I think it's just given me a lot of great advice. And I've read it pretty much every year. I've read it 4 or 5 times now since I started reading, which I think is a testament to how much I like it. It's the only book that I've read at least 3 times. I'm currently reading one of the other books on this list for a 3rd time. But yeah, this is the only one that I've done more than that. So next up on the list is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is a pretty classic book. Not classic isn't old, but everyone knows what it is. Everyone's heard of it at least. And that's because it's a great book. It really goes to show you how little you saying you're going to do something matters. Like you having a goal, I'm going to climb Mount Everest or whatever. That doesn't matter if you're not putting in the continual work, if you're not building the habits that will lead you to your goals. And it almost goes to show you that goals don't matter. It's what you do. It's what you do consistently. It's the habits that you build that shape who you are. I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the Compounding Effect book or the Compound Effect, but it's in a different way. I would recommend reading both of them if you haven't read either of them. The next book is The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. So this book is great for helping you if you haven't started something. And it's also great if you have started it, but you are too scared, you feel bad, you feel like you're bad at it. A good example of this is when I started playing guitar. I felt horrible. I felt so bad and so defeated. And I read this book and it really motivated me to keep going. And I've been playing for over 4 years now. And I'm definitely a much better guitar player than I was when I started. And I think it's just because I understood that I wouldn't be confident with it at first. And the main thing that I needed to do was do the thing. The book does a good job of explaining the purpose of living by your values and morals as opposed to living to accomplish a certain thing. It really makes you think about why you're doing stuff and if it's really what you want in your life as opposed to you doing it because you think it's the right thing to do. The final book on this list is the book that I'm now reading for a 3rd time. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This book is also very, very popular, very well known, and that's because it's really good. If you haven't read it, you definitely should. it just honestly will make you a better person. There's no other way to put it. If you read the book, you'll probably come out of it a better person than you were. And I think uh, you can hold on to the messages in the book throughout your life, and it teaches you just to be a better person, honestly. So, yeah, you should definitely read it if you haven't. The next category that we have is philosophy. I think this is a very important category. I'm a philosophy minor. I just kind of took it for fun, and then it really changed the way I think about the world and I think about everything that I do. And it just teaches you to think pretty much. And these aren't any of like the basic, Plato or Socrates or Aristotle stuff. I didn't want to put that in. Um, just because I don't know. I feel like everyone knows Socrates and Plato. So this is a little bit different. This is has some more modern stuff that I think is really good. So the first book on here is Ikigai. So this is sort of a Japanese philosophy, and it's the idea that you can do whatever you're doing and you can put as much passion into it as you want. So a big example in the book was people working in the rice fields. They'd be super passionate and they loved their lives. They were very simple in the way that they would do things, and they would work and they would live their lives, and they were kind of together. And I think that in the United States, especially, we constantly want things to be better. We want to be doing better than we were. We want to keep going and progressing. And that's not necessarily necessary. Um, I think it's important to look at how your life is and if you actually like what you're doing. And if you like what you're doing, there's no reason to try and push forward just to do it if it's going to put you in a position that you don't want to be in. So I think this book is great for people who live in capitalist economies, that are on the grind set. I think it's a real change of pace, and it made me think about what I'm doing in my life and if it's what I want and where I want to go from here. Next up on the list is Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. This is a great book, and I think it's more relevant than ever. I know it's been repopularized online recently due to the political state that we live in and the amount of social media that we consume as a collective. It's been crazy. So I think if you haven't read this book, you really should. Like I said, it's more relevant than it has ever been. Uh, the book talks about how, as a society, we used to focus much more on information, and that was how we deemed people and things to be correct. It was all information based. People would go and sit in on multiple hour long presidential debates around the country just because that was how we saw things, and we appreciated when people were intelligent. And now everything is pretty much clickbait. Everything gets talked about if it's flashy and crazy. There's only super attractive people on the news and on TV. And that wasn't how things were. It was solely based on intelligence. And I think we really are focusing so much on amusement and entertainment and whatever we can get that we're really detracting from who we are as a species and how we've gotten to the point uh, to where we are now. It was always about intelligence and using our brains as much as we could to solve bigger problems and to get further as a society. And we're sort of eating ourselves alive um, without it. So, yeah, it's kind of heavy. If you haven't read the book, you definitely should. I've read it a couple times just because I think it's really good, and I'd recommend it for sure. The final book I have in the philosophy category almost isn't a philosophy book, but I think you can definitely take it that way. It's Positioning by Al Ries. So this is sort of a marketing, script writing, copywriting book that talks about the way that you position a product to be in the forefront of the market. And I think that if you see yourself as a product, this book is really good. If you take it as a personal story, as something to better yourself, you can really see all of the ways that you can set yourself up in a position to be different from the rest. As long as you are a unique person in work and in your life, I really think that it sets you apart from everyone else, not in a bad way at all, in a way that makes you sought after, makes you just a cooler person and more interesting to be around. So yeah, I'd really recommend the book. It's also good for marketing for sure because that's what it is for. But yeah, I thought it was a very interesting book to add to this category. The final category that we have here is history. I've been trying to get into more history recently because I think it's important to know uh, where we've come from, where we're going, our strong suits and our failures as a species. Um, so yeah, I've been trying to read it. If you have any history books that you'd recommend, please send them my way. Put them in the comments because a lot of them bore me, honestly. Uh, when they get really, really detailed, I just can't get into it that much. I'm more of a broad strokes kind of guy. So yeah, if you have any books, please recommend them. The first book is *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. This is a very highly touted book, and I read it recently, very recently, and it was really, really good. I can see why everyone has talked about it so much. It pretty much goes from the very beginning of our species up to now, and a lot of mental aspects of it, not just like this happened here, this happened here, this happened here. It really explains how we got to thinking the way that we do. It's almost like a psychology book in that sense, and I think it's just a really good book to read if you don't understand how humans got to be the way that they are. The next book is quite similar, but in a very different sense. I'll explain later, but it's A Little History of the World by E.H. Gombrich. This book goes back very far in time, just like *Sapiens* does, not as far. And then it works its way up, like how *Sapiens* does. But this is more of a this happened type of thing in very broad strokes, which is why I enjoyed it very much. I think it does a great way of explaining where words came from, where ideas came from, how the countries and the continents got to be the way that they were. And I think it gives you a very good understanding of what has happened to bring us here physically, literally, through history, not just mentally. And I think they're very good books as they supplement themselves very well. You should read both of them for sure. And then the final book on this list, book number 22, is *Factfulness* by Hans Rosling. So I read this book over the summer just because it was recommended by Jamie Dimon in his like 100 books list. I picked it out at random and I was really impressed by the book. I really enjoyed it. And the reason is it goes through a bunch of facts that are present in the world and compares them to how things have been in the past. So online, on social media, on the news, everywhere, we're always promoting negativity, negative things that are happening in the world, wars, bombings, disease, all this awful stuff. And it makes us think that everything's super bad. And what this book does is it shows you all of the ways that we have improved as a whole in pretty much every category. In every category, we are better as a species than we were previously. Obviously, there is very bad stuff going on all over the world. But this book really, I think, makes you realize that it's not all bad. Things are very good. We're doing better than we were. And it was really motivating for me seeing all this awful stuff all the time and then realizing, things actually are good. And I need to be very, very grateful for what I have and where I am. And if I was born 200 years ago, wouldn't be very good for a lot of reasons. But yeah, so that's the end of the list. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new here, you have to subscribe. And I know you're new here because this is my first video. So please subscribe, follow, no, not follow, just subscribe and like and hit that bell thing. I don't know how to do outros. So yeah, thank you for watching.